Imagine a woman named Amrita, an Indian American living in New York City. She saw a mayoral candidate in her city, New York, named Zohran Mamdani. She saw him embrace his Indian identity in America. She saw him dance to Bollywood songs. She saw him eat Indian food with his hands. His entire campaign was based around embracing Indian aesthetics and culture to create an impression in the minds of New York liberals who've always had a curiosity towards Indian culture and pop culture. She saw him rap under his rap name Mr. Cardamom. She tried her best to look past it. Once she was able to look past it, she felt proud. Somebody who was American but also embraced his Indian roots, even if he was born in Uganda. He spoke about issues that New Yorkers felt strongly about: affordability, rent, the housing crisis, the cost of groceries, etc. She felt a sense of kinship to this man, and she stepped out and campaigned for him with great zeal. And then she saw him win the elections.
CNN projects that Democratic Socialist Zohran Mamdani, the Democratic candidate, will be elected the next mayor of New York, New York, defeating former New York governor turned independent Andrew Cuomo.
Democratic candidate Zohran Mamdani has been elected to be New York's next mayor.
Zohran Mamdani has been elected mayor of New York City, capping the Democrats' stunning ascent from little-known state lawmaker just a year ago to one of the most talked-about politicians in the country.
The future is in our hands. My friends, we have toppled a political dynasty.
But then she started noticing some other things. She noticed his attacks on her culture.
Sat Sri Akal ji, my name is Zohran Mamdani.
She noticed a readiness on his part to attack India's culture consistently, but a complete refusal to highlight the extremism of other cultures in New York. She realized that his campaign may not be as grassroots as you'd think. She noticed him unnecessarily bringing Indian politics into New York, but not say a word about the politics of Bangladesh and Pakistan, or his country of origin, Uganda, which is 100 times more toxic and extremist than India. She noticed him outrightly lie about the country that he claims to love so much and know so well, and whose aesthetics he embraces.
My father, his family comes from Gujarat in India, and his family is Muslim, I'm Muslim. And Narendra Modi helped to orchestrate what was a mass slaughter of Muslims in Gujarat to the extent that we don't even believe there are Gujarati Muslims anymore.
And that's when it dawned on her. She had been scammed. Unfortunately, not helping that Indian stereotype. She realized that Mamdani is not what he seems. He's a chameleon who has no love for India and only uses the aesthetics of India to sell himself as a zany, cultured, but adequately oppressed minority to impress rich New York liberals. And now that he's been elected mayor of New York City, one of the most iconic and famous cities of the world, let's look at the different colors of Zohran Mamdani. Mamdani primarily ran his campaign on the issue of affordability. Mamdani has promised a $30 minimum wage for all by 2030 in New York, along with free buses, rent freezes on apartments, and city-owned grocery stores that will, according to him, bring down grocery prices substantially. Even though this experiment has failed in other states, existing city-run grocery experiments, like in Kansas and Florida, show poor performance, store closures, empty shelves, and dependency on subsidized funding.
Every aisle is like a ghost town. The chips are gone, the meat is gone, the cheese and yogurt are gone. Even the frozen section has more frost than food.
It used to be packed when it first opened, back in a couple years back.
For months, food has been purchased and not replaced by the store.
But again, seemingly the people of New York are happy to wait and see what Zohran Mamdani can do for them in terms of affordability. So whether or not he can deliver on his promises of bringing affordability to New York, that's something that we'll have to wait a few years to see. However, there is another aspect of Mamdani that I think is very relevant now that he's been elected mayor of the city. And that is the two faces of Mamdani. Mamdani has seemed to inherit his father's sympathy for Islamic extremists. His father, Mahmoud Mamdani, apparently humanized terrorists and suicide bombers. In his book, When Victims Become Killers, Mamdani compares India to Rwanda and Hindus to the Hutus. The Hutus being the tribe that carried out a genocide in Rwanda of the Tutsis. Mahmoud Mamdani was also a big fan of Muhammad Ali Jinnah, the founding father of Pakistan, whose genocidal call for Direct Action Day resulted in the killings and assault of countless Hindu men, women, and children. In his book, Good Muslim, Bad Muslim, Mamdani hails Jinnah as a political intellectual who had a completely secular disposition. Zohran Mamdani seems to have also inherited these traits. He claimed that the biggest victim of 9/11 was his aunt because she used to feel scared while traveling on the New York subway when she wore a hijab after 9/11.
I want to speak to the memory of my aunt who stopped taking the subway after September 11th because she did not feel safe in her hijab.
Oh yeah, she was the biggest victim of 9/11, not the innocent people who were incinerated on the 60th floor of the North Tower when the plane rammed into it. In fact, later it was revealed that apparently the story was false. His aunt did not in fact wear a hijab. She was not living in the United States at that moment. She was actually living in Tanzania. And also talking about the Muslims being the biggest victims, there were 3 confirmed deaths after religiously motivated attacks after 9/11 in America. The 3 victims' names were Balbir Singh Sodhi, Sikh, Waqar Hassan, Muslim, and Vasudev Patel, Hindu. Another suspected victim was a Coptic Christian named Adel Karas. So out of the 4 casualties as a result of hate crimes after 9/11, only 1 victim was Muslim. But of course, Muslims are the real victims. Apart from that, Mamdani has openly and proudly said that he's a supporter of the LGBTQ community and will set up an affair office for their rights in healthcare. And this is what has surprised me about all the big left-wing influencers that have supported him and mainstream media outlets that have fawned over him. They've never asked him questions regarding this support, because as proudly as Mamdani says that he supports the LGBT community, he supports the Islamic extremist community with even greater fervor. Mamdani once shared an article questioning whether the murder of Lee Rigby was terrorism. Remember, Lee Rigby was part of the British Armed Forces and he was run over, stabbed and beheaded by Islamic extremists in London. His intern, Hadika Arzu Malik, has said that electing Mamdani is part of a holy jihad.
That none of this is in vain, that this is all jihad, that this is all ibadah, and that this is all counted for by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Am I willing to sacrifice for this bigger noble cause?
He regularly associates with people like Hassan Piker, who once went viral for saying America deserved 9/11, who wishes that his own country, America, had been defeated by the USSR.
We are in the heart of the imperial core. This is the country that defeated the USSR, unfortunately.
Mamdani himself has openly supported the quote-unquote global intifada presented as solidarity with Palestine, but historically has tied to violent extremism.
We have elected officials who are taking paid-for trips to Israel.
I have developed a proposal for the Department of Community Safety.
So who is ready to end the exception? I want to hear you say, not on our time! Not on our time! Not on our time!
He also supports the idea of, from the river to the sea, Palestine will be free, a thought widely understood as calling for the elimination of the State of Israel. He has never clearly condemned Palestinian terrorist groups and repeatedly avoids naming Hamas when speaking on violence.
Do you believe that Hamas should lay down their weapons and leave the leadership in Gaza?
I believe that any future here in New York City is one that we have to make sure that's affordable for all, and as it pertains to Israel and Palestine, that we have to ensure that there is peace, and that is the future that we have to fight for.
But you won't say that Hamas should lay down their arms and give up leadership in Gaza.
I don't really have opinions about the future of Hamas and Israel beyond the question of justice and safety.
In fact, in the cover of a rap song, he openly echoed support for Hamas and the militant ideology associated with it.
Under the pseudonym Mr. Cardamom, Mamdani himself drops a rap song in which he states, "My love to the Holy Land 5. Okay? My love to the people who funneled millions to Hamas. You better look them up."
My love to the Holy Land 5. You better look them up.
I'm surprised why nobody has asked him how his support for these extremist groups is going to square with his support for the LGBTQ community, because these groups' feelings towards the LGBTQ community is very well known. He says he's a massive supporter of the LGBTQ community, women and minorities, but he's also openly associated with CARE, the Council on American Islamic Relations. It is the largest Muslim advocacy organization in America. Now, CARE's institutional history, leadership statements, platform choices, and recent policy positions reveal significant anti-LGBTQ sentiment that conflicts with its self-proclaimed civil rights mission. Hassan Shibli, who served as executive director of CARE Florida, in a 2009 Facebook post, categorized homosexuality as a sin that is going to incur the wrath of God, along with alcohol, premarital sex, and worshipping a human. Despite these statements being brought to public attention, Shibli maintained in his position at CARE Florida, and the organization never publicly repudiated his views, even at the height of cancel culture. Even more troubling is CARE's long-standing relationship with Imam Siraj Vahaj, who previously served on CARE's advisory board and remains one of CARE's most frequent speakers to this day. Vahaj has repeatedly and publicly expressed virulently anti-gay views, calling homosexuality a disease on American society. In sermons, Vahaj has stated, "You know what the punishment is if a man is found with another man? The Prophet Muhammad said, the one who does it and the one to whom it is done. Kill them both." So according to Vahaj, the punishment for homosexuality is death. On top of that, Vahaj was pointed out by prosecutors as a quote, unindicted co-conspirator in the 1993 World Trade Center bombing, which left 6 people dead, and has publicly defended the plotters of the attack against FBI and CIA, who he dubs the real terrorists. Now, why is all this relevant? Why are we talking about this gentleman? Because here's a picture of Mamdani at a mosque in New York, gleefully smiling with the same Siraj Wahhaj, asking for his endorsement and calling him one of America's foremost Muslim leaders. Why has no media outlet asked him how he squares supporting people like this, supporting organizations like this, and then talking about how much he cares about women, the LGBTQ community, and minorities? Because by the looks of it, Mamdani cares about the LGBTQ community the way Arjun Kapoor cares about his producer's money, or Rahul Gandhi cares about his party candidates' election deposits. One cleric promoted by CARE, Abdul Nasir Jangra, has justified the possession of female sex slaves and advocated marital rape as a divinely given right. The mainstream media rarely challenges CARE representatives who appear on TV claiming to support lofty ideals that conflict squarely with the extremism that they preach within the Muslim American community. In Michigan, CARE actively opposed amendments to the Elliott-Larsen Civil Rights Act, or ELCRA, that would add sexual orientation and gender identity as protected classes, which means CARE did not want the LGBTQ community to get constitutional protections against exploitation and discrimination. In 2023, a letter called Navigating Differences, signed by nearly 300 Muslim religious leaders, including highly influential figures like Yasir Qadhi, who are promoted heavily by CARE. The letter, which some LGBTQ Muslims and progressive groups saw as a direct response to their growing visibility, asserted that opposing LGBTQ practices is explicitly stated in Islamic revelation, and it is a necessary element of Islam. The letter stated that this was unanimously agreed upon by qualified scholars and deemed an immutable part of Islam. Intellectuals promoted by CARE, with whom Zohran Mamdani has so openly associated, have said that hating and discriminating against the LGBTQ community is an immutable characteristic of Islam. Critics of CARE have said that the organization seeks to uphold the right of men to control women, and by extension the right of religious institutions to discriminate against LGBTQ individuals. Nobody has grilled Mamdani about this. If he cared so deeply for the LGBTQ community, minorities, and women, why hasn't he come out and denounced CARE in no uncertain terms for their opinions? Why hasn't he distanced himself? And why hasn't he said that he will not take the support of CARE, either support from their members or their money? Why is the Jewish and Hindu community held to insane standards while every horrible belief of the Muslim community gets a free pass? Mamdani wants people to think that CARE will take care, as in look after the LGBTQ community. But CARE wants to take care of the LGBTQ community the way people in The Sopranos or The Godfather took care of stuff. The second thing I want to talk about, Zohran Mamdani, is the South Asian scam that he is running. Now, what is this South Asian scam? I've talked about this in previous videos, but basically, this is a scam run by left-leaning Indians, Pakistanis, and Bangladeshis who have a deep hatred for India, but can also recognize that out of these 3 countries, only India has any sort of a positive reputation in the West. So what they do is, whenever India produces something positive, they will co-opt it by calling it South Asian. For example, Indian food becomes South Asian food. Bollywood becomes South Asian movies. Indian songs become South Asian songs. Yoga becomes South Asian. Meditation becomes South Asian. Any positive achievements by Indian Americans becomes a South Asian achievement. If an Indian American kid wins a math Olympiad, suddenly he's a South Asian kid, hence taking any credit away from India. But anything negative coming from India is definitely placed on India's shoulders, not South Asia's shoulders. For example, caste is an Indian problem, not a South Asian problem, even though it exists just as violently in Pakistan and in Muslim communities in the Indian subcontinent. This is what Mamdani does expertly as well. Mamdani uses his Indianness in the same way. It is used as a glossy coat to make him look good and super ethnic in the eyes of the rich New York liberal who will vote for him. They see him as the zany, quirky theater kid embracing his Indianness. He produces Bollywood-themed ads, uses Bollywood dialogues and aesthetics in his campaign. At the same time, he throws India and Indian Americans under the bus at every given opportunity. Here he is gleefully posing and smiling under a picture of Bhindranwale, a Sikh terrorist who was responsible for the deaths of thousands of Hindus and Sikhs during the Khalistani insurgency in India in the 80s and 90s. Bhindranwale openly threatened to massacre innocent Hindus. His followers pulled innocent Hindus out of buses and executed them point blank in Punjab. He lamented when the Hindus of India were able to rebuild the Ram Temple, one of the holiest sites in Hinduism, after a 500-year wait. The Ram Temple was destroyed by the Islamic invader Babur because he knew how sacred the site was to the Hindus. It was destroyed to spite the Hindus and exert Islam's power over the Hindus, once again throwing India and her indigenous culture under the bus while appropriating Indian aesthetics. He has been known for his anti-India and specifically anti-Hindu statements. Mamdani was seen in a rally where people were chanting, "All Hindus are bastards."
Sat Sri Akal ji, my name is Zohran Mamdani.
He presents himself as somebody who loves India, somebody who loves using Indian aesthetics, somebody who's a bit of an expert on India. And then he says in a town hall that there are no Muslims left in Gujarat because Modi killed them all.
No, and I just want to say something here, which is that my father, his family comes from Gujarat in India, and his family is Muslim, I'm Muslim. And Narendra Modi helped to orchestrate what was a mass slaughter of Muslims in Gujarat to the extent that we don't even believe there are Gujarati Muslims anymore. And when I tell someone that I am, it's a shock to them that is even the case. And this is someone who we should view in the same manner that we do Benjamin Netanyahu. This is a war criminal.
Are you ready to hear something shocking? The population of Muslims in Gujarat is 6 million. The population of Muslims in USA is 3.5 million. There are more Muslims in just the state of Gujarat than the entire United States. This is the South Asian scam. He calls Modi a war criminal, compares him to Netanyahu. He attacks Modi in various rallies.
And my critique has been of Mr. Modi and the BJP political party for their vision of an India that only has room for certain kinds of Indians. And it's part of a belief that pluralism is something to be celebrated, something to be strived for.
All while supporting Prime Minister Modi and an Indian government approach to violence for our community members.
He's purposely targeting Indian Americans and Hindu Americans by dragging Indian politics into a New York mayoral race. There are also tons of Pakistani Americans and Bangladeshi Americans. Why isn't he vilifying Pakistani Muslim Americans the same way? Why isn't he talking about the heinous crimes of the Pakistani establishment, one of the biggest supporters and sponsors of global terrorism? Why isn't he vilifying Bangladeshi Americans this way by talking about their regime who have been systematically ethnically cleansing the Hindu minority population? According to a Bangladeshi professor, no Hindus will be left in Bangladesh after 30 years if the current rate of ethnic cleansing continues. He emphasized that the decline is driven largely by migration due to sustained persecution and discrimination by the government of Bangladesh. If he wants to talk about India, why is he only talking about Hindutva and not Muslim politics? Why isn't he talking about organizations like the All India Muslim Personal Law Board that want to follow Sharia law but not the Indian constitution, who believe in the man's right to use triple talaq and divorce his wife, a practice so archaic that it has been banned even in Pakistan and Bangladesh? Why doesn't he talk about the All India Muslim Personal Law that believes that women should only have 50% inheritance rights that a man has? Because this is the reality of Zohran Mamdani, the chameleon. He's using his Indianness as a condom, something to be used for its intended purpose and then thrown away. He uses his Indianness and Indian aesthetics to look zany and ethnic and adequately oppressed in the eyes of liberal New Yorkers, who will then go vote for him to get rid of their white guilt. Once he's achieved his purpose, once he's gotten the votes of the New York liberals, he discards this Indianness. Then he vilifies the same India and her indigenous culture to further his political career. These are the actions of a scam artist. The people of New York should know about this chameleon behavior, this two-faced behavior. The people of New York should know about how he throws a country under the bus, whose aesthetic he's so excited to co-opt. The people of New York should know that while in public he pretends to care so deeply about women and LGBTQ issues, but he openly associates himself with CARE, one of the most extremely anti-woman and anti-LGBTQ groups in America. He openly associates himself with religious preachers that call homosexuality the greatest disease in America. Is that not two-faced behavior? Is that not a scam? Maybe he'll move away from this rhetoric once he's mayor, because ultimately New York's problems are very different and do not require this kind of virtue signaling to solve them. But if he starts to fail in delivering on his lofty promises, he might fall back on his virtue signaling and India bashing to try and put some credit in the bank in the eyes of his voters. That's the game you play when you play the South Asian scam. And these are questions that his supporters and that mainstream media need to ask him. But I'll leave the rest to you. And good luck, New York.